So as I was thinking about today's talk, I thought about what would be a great opening, and then I reflected back a long time. And I remember that Jean and I had seen this ad for this camp called Camp Olympia, and that for $250, we could take our children, who were at the time like 8 and 10, and we could take them to this camp and spend the whole weekend. And we would have a cabin to ourselves, and we could do all of this great stuff, all these great things together. And so we trekked down to just outside of Houston, north of Houston. And we're there, and we're enjoying things, and all of a sudden, they have this ropes course. And this ropes course has all these things, you know, the big slide that you go through, and all this thing. And then they had this thing called the pamper pole. And my son Matthew was the aggressive adventurer, someone. He says, "Dad, go do that." Well, I don't know if you know what a pamper pole is, but it's a telephone pole about this wide, and it goes 30 feet in the air. And there are spikes that you climb on. And you have, at the top of it, there's a board like this. And you got to somehow get up there and get on that board, and then there's a trapeze about 6 feet out. And you've got to leap with everything to grab hold of that trapeze. Now, the idea is, though, you're in a harness, right? You're not going to do this without a harness. So I'm there and I'm going, God, my 9 or 8-year-old son said I could do this, I could do this. And I'm going, oh, crap. So one step at a time, I start growing up this pole. And I notice as I start getting to the top, the legs start to quiver. You know that nervous quiver that happens when you're getting to unknown territory? And then, so I'm right there, and I'm I'm like this, and the thing's here, and I said, how am I going to get up there? There's nothing to hold on. And so I just sort of start lifting the leg, and I got one leg up, and I'm sort of holding on to the side, and I got another leg up, and I'm up, and I come up, and I stand up, and I go, and then I look down, and you're looking down, and my legs were going like this. They were just going like this, and I mean, every part of me was in fear. Can I tell you, I was in deep, deep fear, and I'm looking, and there's all these people down below, and they're looking really small, and they're going, oh my God, you can do it, jump, jump, jump. And I'm looking, that trapeze looked 20 feet away. And I said, I've got a harness, I've got to trust that I've got a harness. And then I closed my eyes, and I surrendered in that moment, and I took the leap. And I grabbed on, and I held. And I said, oh, thank God, I'm not going to look like a fool. They lowered me down. My 8-year-old goes up, pops up, jumps, does it in like 20 seconds. What was the difference? He had no fear. He knew the whole time he was safe. I, being adult, I probably was 40, 41 at that time. I had built up all these fears through my life. And those fears stopped. But you notice something that happened? I didn't let my fear keep me on the ground. I let my fear move me up. So I didn't judge how fast I did it. I did it. I overcome the fear. I realized it's possible. Now, if you ask me to do that today, that's 22 years later. I might have more fears to do that. But here's something that's interesting about that. And I start with that story because one of the things I know is our nature is to grow. And in order to grow, we've got to face the unknown. Anytime we're facing the unknown, fear is going to come up for us because that's our ego. It's coming up. So let's explore this idea just a little bit more. What are the types of fear that we face? We've got the fear of death. This is probably the greatest fear that we face in our lives, this idea of what is death. And if we don't have a sound basis of knowing who we are, that we are the infinite expressing, that we are eternal beings, that this physical body is simply an expression of the internal us, this idea of who we are that is eternal, this point of consciousness within the one, then death becomes very scary. But if we realize that death is simply that time, it's a portal through which we pass into the next dimension, through which we pass into the next way of being, and realize if we are emanations of the infinite, as emanations of the infinite, we will never get anywhere. We're always on a journey. We'll always be becoming more. So we're always going to be moving on. So it's never going to end. It's never going to stop. And we have to embrace the idea. See, the foundation is, have we embraced the truth? Have we embraced that we're infinite? Have we embraced the idea of oneness? Chances are when fear comes up, we have not. The next one is the fear of pain and suffering. And I put that up there as a combination because I want to separate the two. I want to explain what the difference is between that. Because suffering is a state of mind that we've chosen. Suffering is a mental idea interpreting something that's happening to us that is causing us pain. Pain is something where the biology of the body is reacting to something. If you stick the body with a pin, you're going to yell. That's pain. But there's no need to fear it until you feel it. A lot of times, if you know the doctor's coming at you with a needle, do you ever have that? At 5 years of age, I was one of those kids who had infections, and I was constantly getting shots. Back then, it was shots. And I remember Dr. Rockwell came to the house, and I had an ear infection. He was going to give me a shot, and I knew it. And I boot-scooted like all you can imagine, and I was under my parents' bed, dead center. And on one side is my dad yelling at me. My mother's at the door. The doctor's on the other side with this needle. Did you think I was coming out? My dad lifted the entire bed up, and the doctor pulled me out, gave me the shot, and I was done. The pain was for a second or two, but my mind had turned it into something greater, so I was suffering before the pain. Do you see how we took that with our mental idea and made it even more? Then we've got the fear of loss. And this is where the greatest teaching that the Buddha talked about. He says, do not become attached. Attachment is the source of all suffering. We become attached to money, we become attached to clothing, we become attached to people, we become attached to cars, we become attached to all of these things. And it's not that those things aren't great, it's the attachment to it that causes us the pain, that causes us to suffer. It's the fear of losing these things that causes the pain. I mean, we were watching the other night The Big Short. Oh my God, think about the pain that those people felt, all the money that these people lost in the stock market. And yet today the market's higher than it was then. So all that pain was for what? For naught. It was a chosen thing, the mind. The fear of failure. So let's just talk about this idea of failure. Failure cannot happen unless you think you're failing. But you see, here's the idea. If you are an eternal being, can you fail? Did Thomas Edison fail at 500 attempts to build the light bulb? It took him 1,000 or more. He didn't view it as a failure. He looked at it as another way of getting clarity on his path. You see, how we look at things, are you getting the idea that it's our awareness, it's our perspective that causes us the pain, that because the pain comes through our fear. The other one is conditioned fear. We're conditioned by our parents, by society. How many people were taught, if you don't follow the Bible, you're going to be damned to hell? Anybody in here? I want you to know, based on that teaching, I'm going straight to hell. Because I don't follow the teachings of the Bible. I follow that the Bible is a great tool. It's got wonderful messages in it. But is it the self-proclaimed only Word of God? I think not. Why is it? Because it's been changed thousands and thousands of times through the translations over thousands of years to suit whoever was in power at the time to write it. I make that because I know I've studied the Bible. I've studied all the transitions. Let's just take it to this country. Do you know In God We Trust was not put on the dollar bill until 1954 or 1956? It was put there to battle communism. Do you realize that the Pledge of Allegiance didn't start until the 1956? It was to battle communism. It had nothing to do with our forefathers. But many, many people in this country believe that our forefathers said those things. They did not. The really fascinating thing is become a student of life. Become a student of life and understand that history, as we study it, is always written from the perspective of the victors. It is always written. The only place it's not is the Old Testament. The Jewish people allowed themselves to not rewrite the history because they were just beat up. The Jewish people were constantly beat up and taken over. They were slaves to everybody. Isn't that an interesting consciousness? And it seems to still pervade today. You see, conditioned fear. We're fearful of things happening. And what is happening in politics right now? We're being conditioned to fear this and fear that and fear everything that's going on. All the message out there is fear. I'm asked all the time, what are my political beliefs? And I say this: I'm for inclusivity. I'm for an affordable living for everyone. I'm for people having affordable housing. I'm for people having opportunity to expand and grow. I'm for people having their individual rights back as they vote and they bring leaders into power. I'm for things. I'm not against things. So when it comes time to vote, I will make a choice who is for what I am for, not who is against something I fear. You see, I don't want to go and vote on fear, because if I'm doing that, I'm out of my power. Power means I know who I am. Then we've got fear of the unknown, and this is the greatest one of all. This fear of the unknown is the thing that paralyzes us. What is it? Fear is a sign that we are up against our comfort zone. It's the edge of the known and the unknown. It's that point right there where we're on that very edge, where we know where we are and it's comfortable where we are. And to grow, to become more, to have that dream come true, we've got to make a step. The clearest example is in the Indiana Jones movie, where he's on that ledge and he wants to get to this other cave, and he's on the very ledge and he just knows there has to be a way, and he takes that first step and he finds there was a ledge there that he couldn't see. It was the fear of the unknown, but once he took that step, everything changed. But do you have the faith? Do you have the belief that it's possible? Do you have the understanding and knowing who you are? So let's look at that a little bit more. Here's the idea of what the ego does. It uses fear to keep us from changing. If we're thinking with our analytical mind will keep us where we are. Our analytical mind is the ego talking. And here's the difference. When we talk about the idea of what is intuition, what is that inner guidance versus what is ego, the intuitive nature of who we are does not analyze. The mind that is associated with the ego does analyze. And how many times have you had that intuitive hit? I can remember 10 years ago or so, I had a stockbroker at the time who was managing my portfolio. I said, I had an intuitive hit. I wanted Ford Motor Company. I knew based on everything it was just going to happen. So I called my broker up and I said to my broker, I want to put $10,000 on Ford. And my broker said, let me talk to you about that. I think, I don't agree with you on that, but why don't you split it? Why don't you split it between General Motors and Ford? This way you've got some diversification. Inside, I said, no, I'm right. Outside, I said, well, he's a broker. He knows better than I do. So I did his way. A year later, my Ford tripled in value. My GM went down. I had the intuitive hit. I didn't really listen to it all the way. There's an inner knowing about intuition, and it's real important that we get it. The result is, here's the result, it's not knowing who we are. So we're going to go back to the very essence of what we teach at Agape. We understand that there's an infinite power and presence. It's an energy, it's a consciousness. It knows all things. It's always been, it always will be. It's constantly regenerating, rejuvenating itself. And each one of us is a point of consciousness that is it, that is individualized. And as a point of consciousness, everything that we are is it. And we have been given the freedom through the process of how we think, which is our habits of thought, those things that are our beliefs. Our beliefs are our thoughts, our words, and our actions aligned in a direction. And when we have that direction, the laws of the universe conspire and come, and we create that experience. We're divinely led every step of the way. So when we understand that and we know who we are as that point of consciousness, if I know I'm divinely guided, how can I have fear? I have that tether on me. I have that harness on me. I'm supported, but I don't understand that it's there. I'm forgetting I'm supported. So how do we find this support? How do we go beyond? And so we go beyond in three ways. We have spiritual work. The spiritual work is meditation, it's prayer, it's affirmations, and I use visualization. There's many other tools. There's gratitude and many others. I put these four up there because in the use of these four tools, what we're doing is we're saying, I am one with all that exists. I know that oneness. I'm affirming that. I'm building a new belief that's separate from what my ego believes. So I use these. This is why we call a daily spiritual practice the single most important thing we do in our lives. It should be the first thing we do. It should be the one thing that when we get through with our day, we've made sure that we've done our spiritual practice, because from that, everything else flows. The second thing we do is we do our mental work. Our mental work is to become aware. Become aware of who we are, aware that we have the power to create, and aware that everything that is out there in form can be changed in our experience by simply changing our thought. We also then can change how we look at fear. We don't look at the unknown as something to fear. We look as known as the unknown is that place where we're going, where we can create anew. It's where there's a blank canvas, where we have our paint with us and we can paint a new picture. But if we're going to the old picture, we can't paint it because it's already painted. The next thing we have to ask, is it real? Most of our fears are not real at all. They're just created in our minds. They don't exist whatsoever. And I love this one. This is probably my favorite DeMartini quote. Is it on the way or in the way? Is what's facing us, is it on the way to us getting to our goal, or is it in the way? And how we look at it determines how we experience it. Everything is on the way. We just have to realize it. Everything is on the way, giving us a signal how to move forward. If it's too big a block, it means that's the wrong direction. Move this way. But never stop focusing on what that dream is. See, your dream, when it's really lit up, it's your light beam from your lighthouse, and it's always going to point you to where you want to go. The next way is the physical work. It means taking action in the face of fear. You've got to take action. You've got to face that fear, and the only way you're going to do it, you can think about it, you can talk about it, but you've got to move into it. And you'll be divinely guided step of the way. Surrender to what is in front of us. That's a huge one. So it was 2 weeks ago. Last week you heard the story about the wedding that I went to. Well, when we got home from the wedding, the couple who was getting married, their parents who lived across the street, asked us if we would let their dogs, their parents' dog, and the bride's dog out. So there were 4 dogs. I said, no problem. I knew all the dogs but one. So, lo and behold, I go over there. I have a nice suit on. I go in, come on, guys. 2 of them come right out. They know me. I open the door. They go out in the backyard. The little chihuahuas just yapping up a storm, just going crazy. I thought, Dixie, get out there, please, honey. I walk over. I gently reach over so she doesn't bite me. I scratch her. Okay, she goes outside. And I'm looking for the other dog. And I'm going all over the house, and the dog's over there, and it sees me. And then it starts running back and forth. It's in fear. It's terrified of me. It's running back and forth, barking, yelling, screaming like crazy. Finally, I've got the door open and I get it to go out. Whew. My day's made. Except, come on, guys, come on in. The lab comes in. Labs are good. They come in. The little chihuahua comes in. The other one comes in, and there's the growler. And there's a pool right there. So I go, and I start going after the dog. And I'm going around the pool. I'm going around the pool about 8 or 9 times. I've gone around the pool. The dog, nothing's happening. I go home. I grab my son. I said, Steve, come help me. So we go like this. And the dogs are, it's just growling up a storm. And finally, I made a move a little bit like this, and the dog made a move, and it faltered, and it fell in the pool. And so it's cold in that pool. So that dog is swimming around in that pool like crazy, and it's going back and forth. It doesn't know how to get out, and it finally realizes it's going to die, and I go over to the side. It comes over, and I reach down, and I pick it up. What it had done was it surrendered. And I took the dog in, I took the towel, I dried the dog off, I put it down, it ran to the corner and started all over again. But you see, the animal understood that as much fear as it had about me being there, it knew in that moment if it didn't surrender to the fear, it would die. But because it's instinctual, that fear came back. We as humans don't have to have that fear come back because we have the ability to analyze and the ability to think. And I think that's really the key. Sometimes the easiest way to deal with fear is to surrender. Yes, there is fear. Now let's move through it. Let's understand that that goal is there, that we are supported by divine wisdom. We understand that we are one with all that exists. We are the individualization of it, that every aspect of us is supported by the allness that is everywhere present. And as we are supported by that, we not only have a safety net, there's no possible way that we can fail. It's only in our mind that we create the illusion. Now, being aware means we take the illusion away and we center into the truth. And the truth is, we are whole, we're perfect, we're complete, we are eternal, and everything that we need will always be provided. I invite you to go forth this week and to not fear, but to be brave, to be bold. Most importantly, be you. Let's pray. I want to thank you for joining us today. I am so grateful that you took your time to watch or listen to this message. If you found this message beneficial, I would ask you to go to our website. Once there, click on the Contribute button and experience the joy of conscious and purposeful giving. It is through your gifts that we are able to bring this message to the world. I would also ask you to please share this message with anyone you feel might benefit. Again, I want to thank you for joining me and the Agape community as together we bring joy to life.